Hi, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot. Friends, welcome. So I am coming at you live back from the dead. And when I say that, I'm not kidding. So first of all, I'm going to tell the story of me getting very sick, but I still am a little sick. So if I'm blowing my nose or coughing, I'm sorry. I feel 99% better, but I got the sickest I have ever been in my life this past week, and it was bad. So I started to get like a little cold the night before Easter, and just stuffy, those colds coming on with a sore throat. And then, Easter morning, I was like, all right, I can power through Easter, We went to my sister-in-law's and my brother's and had a good Easter. We had Easter dinner around like 2, and by 4, I had to leave. And I started to tank. By Monday morning, I was thrashing in bed, sweating, freezing cold. I actually, for about 12 hours, was hallucinating, which means my fever was probably somewhere around 104 to 106. Couldn't move, could not move. The body aches were so sore. I couldn't walk. I couldn't lift my phone. It was so bad by Tuesday morning. I, weekly called for Pascal. He was kind of checking in on me anyway. And I said, you're going to have to take me to the hospital or help me get strong so I can call my friends. So he was like, Mom, what can I do? So I said, I can't lift anything. I can't eat. I hadn't eaten since Easter dinner on Sunday. And now this was Tuesday at noon. So Pascal thankfully helped me. I had canned soup available. I was like, get chicken noodle soup and help me with water because I couldn't even lift my water jug. So he kind of helped me get a little bit of strength. And then I was able to call my friends who rushed over with electrolytes and, saltines and nursed me back to some semblance of health. And it was awful. I am recording this Monday, so I'm a full week out, and I feel much better. I have to be honest. As soon as I could stomach food, I started eating just raw liver, raw egg yolk, and chicken broth, and I am making a remarkable comeback. But it just brought to mind, I really couldn't walk. And number one, had I been in anything but stellar health and in really great shape, I think this would have killed me. And so it's a testament to stay strong, stay healthy. And it really reinvigorated me, not being able to walk and feeling that helpless. You guys know I'm always training for old age, really. I'm 55 and I want to feel good in my old age. I want to not need assistance. I want to, be active and hopefully have grandchildren one day and play with them. And, I just don't want to be incapacitated as I get older. And this was just another wake up call because I felt like my mother. I felt like decrepit and my bones felt weak, even though I know they're not. And so it was just my wake up call that I'll share with you. Strength train. You got to take care of your body now. You only get one. And if you're not in great health, it's going to catch up with you later in life. And we have this pull right now on social media that if you care about what you put in your body, you're orthorexic, which is an eating disorder of being obsessed with clean food and clean eating. But caring about what you put in your body is not an eating disorder, And strength train, you got to strength train. You've got to keep your bone density high. You've got to keep your muscle mass great. You've got to keep a high amount of lean muscle mass and not have sarcopenia, which is that muscle wasting you see in older people. I see it a lot of in people my age where the flesh starts to pull away. You get that crepey skin in your neck and in your arms. You just want to prevent that because you want to be strong in your older age. And I know 55 is not all that much older, but I'm getting there, and I want you guys to know, especially since most of you are younger than me, it's all fun and games till you hit a certain age. And then all of a sudden it's like, it really, really matters. So build your body now while you can. And I know it's hard with the kids, and I know, life is so scheduled, and it's really, really tricky, I think, to get in a good strength workout or to pay attention to, really good food. I know it's hard. It's really hard. Packaged food is so easy. We're so busy, but we have to we owe it to ourselves. Just it's going to catch up with you. And I'm just so grateful that I am in such good shape and such good health that I could weather such a bad illness. Because again, had I been less, this would have killed me. On that note, when I was sick, the first couple of days, I couldn't even watch a movie. That's how sick I was. I slept like 22 hours a day. But I, as soon as I could watch a movie, I revisited Lessons in Chemistry. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's such a great series. It's on Apple TV. And I was watching it. Number one, I love it because the attention paid to food and good cooking and what that means for nourishing ourselves and our family. I love how it's presented in this series. But also there's a quote that is from the movie that I want to share with you that I just love. And the main character, her name's Elizabeth Zott, is pregnant, and her partner has died, and she is so scared. And she says, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And her friend says, no one can do it, but then you expand. You think you can't do it, and you do it anyway. And that's being a mother. I might get teary-eyed. I just love that quote because we all think we can't, right? We're all pulled. We've talked about capacity. We're all pulled to this incredible overcapacity, right? We're stretched so thin, and we always have room. We have room for more. So I encourage you, as I always do in every podcast, slow down, find the time for yourself, find the time for good food and connection, and worry less about all the activities and keeping busy. And because motherhood will make you expand, and we don't need any other things pulling at our edges to make us expand even more. Okay. So last week I had sent out a email. I don't know if you get my email, but you can go to my website and get on my email list. And I thought it was just an email. I wasn't going to bring it up. I didn't know that it was a podcast topic, but I have had so many requests recently about how to deal with eye rolls that I want to kind of go through this story that I shared in this email because it has a lot to do with eye rolling. So this story is about teaching personal accountability. And so a friend of mine and I were talking about personal accountability in kids and how they're just not wired for it. They deflect, they, push it off. They will do almost anything except take personal responsibility, which is so funny because this friend, I know she takes extreme personal responsibility, and I do too. I am the first one to say I'm sorry. I messed it up. I apologize. How can I do better? I own it almost immediately. I almost never try to put it off on somebody else unless it's somebody else's fault. And so it's wild because Pascal won't take personal responsibility. And so she was like, how do you teach that? And I said, there really is no way to teach. And after I sent out that email, somebody had emailed me back that Brene Brown teaches about personal accountability and responsibility. And I do love Brene Brown, but Brene Brown sometimes steps into the we can teach on a blackboard all these things, right? And that's not true. It's really from modeling. We model, and that's about all we can do. You can tell your child something 100 billion times, but they're going to do what you do. And sometimes they're not. And so I think personal accountability, I've come to the conclusion that it's just a learning curve. It's a learning curve, and that kids have to, they shove it off because of shame, right? They feel shame and they feel like I I can't be responsible for this. So some of that is hardwired more in certain kids than it is in other kids. Like it certainly is with Pascal. I've talked about this before. He like seems to have come into the world with more shame than your average person. But I really don't think there's a thing we can do and sit down and say, this is this is that, this is how come you have to take responsibility. We can, and we should say the words, but I don't think we should expect that the child's just going to learn it and do it that way. So anyway, we were talking and, my friend and I, we were talking about it that day. She was like, I just wish my kid would take some personal responsibility. I was like, I know, it's just modeling. But then later that day, I had an incident with Pascal and I called her up because I was like, dude, you're going to die. This is hilarious. So we were, Pascal and I were in the kitchen and I was cooking chicken nuggets and duck fat fries. And this sounds like a pretty basic meal, but I do this like once or twice a year because it's so extensive. I render my own fat. The potatoes, like I cut them up, I soak them to take out the starch. I do 2 fries in duck fat that I've rendered myself from animals he's harvested. I make my own chicken nuggets and those get fried. They get put in pork rinds, so that, as a breading and then fried in the duck fat. It's like an elaborate meal. It takes a couple of hours and it's super fun. I like doing it when I have the time. It's probably like twice a year. It is not your happy meal to go chicken nuggets and fries. And so anyway, I'm cooking it up and he's like, oh, this looks great. But of course he eats like just everything right now. So as he's waiting for lunch, he's making a protein shake and I'm not looking at him and I hear him go, oh, my eye. So I said, oh, what's up? What happened? He said, oh, the yogurt hit me. He plopped like the yogurt in and it spat back in his eye and it was stinging. And he said, the yogurt, he somehow like blamed it on the yogurt. And I said, well, that was kind of stupid, Pascal. And he was like, what? And I was laughing. I was keeping it light. And he said, it's not my fault. And I was like, excuse me, how is it not your fault? Like the yogurt doesn't have a life of its own. Of course it's your fault. Like you plopped it in and it spat back in your eye. Like it happens to everybody, but it's your fault. And he was like so resistant to it being his fault. And I was like, what is the problem here? Like, it's so wild to me because that's not a huge amount of shame. You made a mistake. The yogurt plopped back in your eye. But he was like insistent that it wasn't his fault. So then 5 minutes later, I'm putting the chicken nuggets in the, boiling grease, the boiling fat. And, I put it in like too low and oil spat back on my hand. So I was like, oh, a whole bunch of expletives. And he was like, what'd you do? And I said, and, I turned to him and he could see like the lecture that's about to come out of my mouth. And he gives the most giant eye roll because he knows what's coming. And so I'm like, oh, I put the nuggets in too close to the grease and I got grease on my hand, which was my fault. I did that. I'm going to be in pain for 10 minutes, but that is my fault. Do you see? And he's like, and he gives me these eye rolls. And so anyway, in the email that I sent, I said, coast the eye roll. And I just love that phrase. And I said, if I write a book about teenagers, it's going to be coast the eye roll. So many of you I know, now that's just a story about personal accountability, but I did want to talk about eye rolls because everybody, I think a lot of my audience is edging into the preteen years now, and eye rolling is a problem. And what happens with eye rolls is I think they start, every kid's different, but they generally start in earnest around like 10 or 11. And I think it's the first shocking display of disrespect for a lot of parents. I know it was for me. And you tend to want your kids to be respectful, right? And we want to teach the lessons at all times. And so these eye rolls feel so powerful and so disrespectful, right? Like your baby, the one you've cared for all this time, looks at you with an eye roll, which says so much, right? Like it says, you're ridiculous, you're stupid, you don't know anything. I can't believe I have to listen to you. There's so much in one eye roll, and it really triggers us. And what I have learned over, with now an 18-year-old, is that you have to coast the eye roll. And I've said this before. I feel like teenage emotions and preteen emotions, they're almost like Tourette's. Like they're not real. They're flashes in the pan. And the more we react to them because we think we're demanding respect, or you're not going to do this in my house, you're not going to look at me like that, right? It feels so disrespectful that we feel like we have to fix it and we have to attend to it. But it's really, honestly, you guys, it's like Tourette's. And it usually in like 5 minutes, assuming you have a good relationship and, your child's not like chaotic and there's disrespect all over the place, which certainly can happen, but that's like not what happened with me and Pascal. It felt like a lesson that had to be taught right in the moment, but it just caused more chaos. And so what I've learned, I literally think of it like a surfboard. When these emotions come, or these eye rolls, or these things that feel so disrespectful for me, I jump on a surfboard in my head and I coast over the emotion and I ride the wave over his emotion. Because if I get stuck in his emotion, it's no different than getting stuck in your toddler emotion. No different. You're going to get lost and you're not going to improve the relationship. You're just going to be stuck in that. I often say with you guys with toddlers, if you ever find yourself saying, "Nuh-uh," to your toddler, you've lost, right? You're mired in their emotion with them. And we have to stay above their emotion, which is staying regulated, right? So in my head, I picture it as a surfboard. Now with the eye roll, it almost feels like one of those skim boards. Have you ever seen somebody work one of those skim boards on the ocean? They're so cool. But that's what the eye roll feels like to me. It's like you just got to coast over it and it goes away. And 99% of the time, the kid, assuming again, like there's a good foundation, the kid like turns around and gives you a hug. Yeah. So I really think with the eye rolls, less attention to the lesson, less attention to you're not going to disrespect me, or I saw you roll your eyes at me. Like we have this kind of archaic notion. I don't know. My mother would have probably whacked me upside the head for an eye roll, but I just think they're so meaningless. They're just a flash in the pan. The other thing that I have to tell you guys, as you're coming in from preteen into teen years, you really have to choose your battles, because if your teens they're moody and they're kind of volatile, and if you pick at every single thing, you're just gonna ruin your relationship, because you're just gonna be at your kid like endlessly. So you have to kind of just see the good and coast over some of these blips of disrespect. The other thing is that I read this somewhere and it made so much sense. Teenagers have to think they know it all, because if they didn't, they'd be crushed by what's in front of them, right? Becoming an adult is fucking hard. And if they knew how much they don't know and how little they're prepared, they would die. They would die, because it's crushing. So we have to kind of let them think they know it all, because otherwise, it's just part of nature. They have to think that they know it all. And part of that is not paying any mind to your past experience. They don't care. They don't care that you've been around these blocks many times and have advice to offer. They don't care about your stories. In fact, all of my stories get an eye roll and say, "Okay, boomer." So they just don't care. So, so again, I think the key word here is coast the eye roll and choose your battles, choose what you're gonna. I'd say, disrespect for other people is far more an important lesson than disrespecting you. Yeah. I think if your child is starting to disrespect elderly people or not be helpful, when they see someone who needs help, those are the things I would be far more concerned with. I would be far more concerned with their friend group. And do they seem to be supportive of each other? I would be far more concerned with teamwork. Are they on a sports team and do they show up for their team members, or are they, super into themselves and only looking out for themselves? Those are the things I would really look out for, not an eye roll toward me. I think that's just a blip on the screen, a little Tourette's. Coast over it, and you'll have your lovely child hugging you within no time. It is really wild with teenagers. It'll be like, "Wah! I love you. Wah! I love you." It's very bipolar, but you can do it. All right, you guys, as always, I appreciate you listening, and rock on. Have a beautiful day.
Okay, bye everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.